This video will help you to write a short story. It's a step-by-step guide intended to help you with short stories and flash fiction. The first step is to get your basics down. You want to start with the assignment sheet, look over what you're supposed to do for the story and make sure that your ideas will match the criteria. You want to determine the number of characters, the setting that you're going to place the story in, that sort of thing, the basics of the story. Remember to limit your number of characters in the story. One or two is best, especially in a short. You can, if you want to, base some ideas on what you know already. Otherwise, you might have to do some research. So if you want to set your story in Seattle, but you've never traveled to Seattle, then you'll have to start looking some things up. However, if you want to base your story in a place that you have been to before, this might be a better idea for you. Most important questions you have to ask when starting are what are your character's motivations and what decision has the character made, either good or bad, before or right after the story starts. So we need to have characters doing things right away. So you kind of want to decide what is going to happen to your character. Sometimes it's a good idea to even have this thing happen to them before the story even starts. Decide what kind of theme or idea that you'll work with in this story. So think big here and try to avoid cliches if at all possible. So the types of stories that you see over and over again in movies. The second step is to come up with a rudimentary plot outline. The beginning of your outline should be the exposition. Typically you want to start with action and start as close to the climax as possible. Fill in the exposition as you go along, so that will be all the background information. Rising action is next, and this includes any sort of conflict that your characters might have. People are moving, we have action happening, choices are made, choices lead to consequences, and that sort of thing. The third part of your outline would be the climax or the high point of the story. This is the turning point, and again, your story should start as close as possible to the climax. Following action happens after this point, and this is when your characters start to react to the high point of the story. They sometimes react to decisions that they might have made, whether they were good or bad. And then we get the resolution. And your story always needs to come to some sort of resolution where we've concluded the story. It doesn't have to be happy, but it does need to wrap up the story. Finally, remember, any plot outline you like that you've written, you do not have to continue with as you write the story. You certainly can make changes to it. The third step is to start drafting your story. One of the things you can do before you start actually writing part of the story is to answer character questionnaires. Once you have a good idea of where your story is going, you can decide some of the characteristics of your characters. These do not have to be ones that ever show up in your story, but it's kind of nice to know what your character's favorite food is, for example. It makes them a well-rounded person. Give each of your characters a unique characteristic is one tip that you can use when writing shorts. Write a running start to your story. This would be just getting an idea down for the beginning that you will probably go back and change later. Often students put too much exposition in the beginning and then can go back in and rewrite that so that it's a little bit smoother. Start close to the climax, as I've said, and fill in the backstory as you write. This takes some practice, so if you write a running start, you can get all the exposition in there, and then you can go back and cut out the things you don't actually need. Run with your inspiration, of course. Often the first draft will be pretty terrible, so that's okay. Just keep writing. Get all of your ideas down, and you can always go back and change them. And then also remember, you definitely can base your shorts on personal experiences. They make great inspiration. However, true life experiences rarely make good stories if they're transcribed exactly. So they do need to make sense in the context of the story, even if that's not what happened in real life. So you may find yourself altering details from personal experiences, and that's just fine. The fourth step is to rewrite your draft. You want to make sure that every time you rewrite your stories, you save a new draft because Sometimes you rewrite something and you decide that it sounded better the first time. Eliminate anything that's not related to the central storyline. When you're writing shorts, you want to make sure that everything is very clean and simple. Keep the settings limited, keep the characters limited, eliminate anything that can be taken out. Rewrite introduction so that it shows rather than tells. So this is something that's discussed in our class. Showing things rather than flatly telling them, that provides more concrete details rather than abstract concepts. Make the climax or the conclusion unexpected. The best shorts have a very strong twist at the end so that the reader was not expecting what happened. Make sure every sentence either reveals a character or moves the plot forward, provides some action for the story. This is a really important step in the writing process because in a short, every sentence counts. And so you want to make sure that either the sentence has given us more information about a character, so we get a little description, or it moves the plot forward. And if it doesn't do either one of those things, then it does not belong in your story. Finally, make sure that you get some dialogue in most of your stories. It's not really a requirement for most of them, but it is nice to have some people talking. There are certainly good shorts with no dialogue in them at all. But if you do add dialogue, make sure that each line does reveal something about the characters and furthers the plot, and make sure that it's formatted correctly. The fifth step is to finish your final draft. So your short story should go through probably at least 3 drafts, 4 or 5 might be better, depending on how good you did the first time. Check it for consistency in character and setting names. Sometimes you decide to change a character's name because it sounds too much like another character's name, and then you don't do it throughout the story. So make sure they're consistent. Edit for shifts in point of view or verb tense. Make sure that, again, everything is consistent. Make sure that you're looking for passages with unnecessary explanation, excessive wordiness, repetition. This typically happens towards the beginning of the story when students are having difficulty getting it started. So make sure that you are going through and editing and cutting those things out. Find your 3 weakest sentences when you're rewriting and just rewrite them for more colorful language and vivid imagery. This is always a good practice right before you get your final draft finished, is just to read back through your story and find your 3 weakest parts and just rewrite them. Add in a better word, use a thesaurus to add in a word you've never used before, make it more colorful, make it more vivid, work on that showing rather than telling. Make sure also that you double check the criteria sheet and that it meets the assignment criteria. So that's how to write short stories. There's plenty of information that has been covered in our class as well, so hopefully that will help you out.